Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you by the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. You can use promo code HOCKEYSEASON, capital H, capital S, all one word, Hockey Season. That will get you $5 off your order at ZephyrEpic.com. ZEPHYR Epic is where you want to check them out. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, whatever it is, they've got you covered for all of your trading card needs. So be sure to go check them out at Zephyr Epic. They've also got a retail location in Surrey if you don't want to shop online. My name is Dave Guidrelli. I'm joined as always by the man who built the place. No, wow, that was a brain fart to the max.
Yeah, I built the wall center, the iconic shirts and wall center.
You built the Dom interview yesterday, which got some really good feedback. Like, people were not happy about his answer about the tier thing. And it was funny because we kind of screwed up the way we were asking questions yesterday. And like, I was going to ask the question about moving up a tier because what I wanted to ask is, Dom, is leading the league in points enough to get a guy into tier 3A? And yeah, he said 2, which pissed off a lot of people. I'll tell you.
There were a lot of people angry that he wasn't in tier 1. First, let's be clear that this is NHL players, not just defensemen. So like tier 1 has McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, those types of players.
But it also has Cale Makar, who Hughes is out playing right now.
Yeah, for 15, 16 games.
He's
Cale Makar. As much as I love Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar's resume to this point is stronger than Quinn Hughes's.
That's not even a hot take, and I'm trying to find a way to go back at you, but you're right.
It's interesting because if you were to ask me, I think that Hughes at this point is at the same level as Makar and Fox. Those are the only 2 other defensemen in tier 1. But I can understand there's at least a logical reason for why you wouldn't yet be ready to put Hughes in tier 1. And that's because those other 2 guys. You don't want
Canucks fans to dunk on you a bunch.
No, it's because Makar and Fox have both won Norris trophies. This could be Quinn here, but he hasn't done it yet, which is at least defensible. That's all you want, I think, is a take that's at least defensible. And Dom saying that he'd put Hughes in tier 2, that's at least defensible. There's at least some logic behind that, even though by the end of the season, I think he could end up in tier 1.
Okay. So Dom wasn't wrong yet, folks, but he might be one day soon. That's Harmon Dial, I should say, is my co-host. And our technical producer is Grady Sass. It's another episode of Canucks Conversation on a beautiful sunny Friday from the Sheraton Wall Center. Wyatt Arndt is going to join us. He took the night off on Stanchies, slacker, and he's going to join us on this show from the Stanchies. What does he call it? The Stanchies nightclub?
HQ.
No, the Stanchies HQ. Is that what he called it? I thought it was the Stanchies nightclub with John Hamm in the background, or as Harmon called him, that old guy. We don't know who he is. Okay. A tired loss in Calgary last night, and that's the takeaway. It was so funny. I was going to tweet this out, but I didn't want to piss anybody off. You know how Twitter is. I was going to tweet out that, no, sorry, I'm not really interested in breaking down a loss that can just be summed up to this team is playing a lot and they are just tired. Like, I think that's everything that happened last night can be summed up to that. I don't think you panic. I don't think we need to sit here for 30 minutes and dissect what went wrong for the Canucks. Pull up the heat map here, Grady, as I pull up a heat map. But they didn't defend well. Like, that was what it came down to. They didn't defend well. The things that have made them so successful this year, being first on pucks, never really letting mistakes kind of be compounded, that wasn't there last night. It was as simple as that. And it's the result of a team that's on their last legs before they get a bit of a break here in some home games, one against the San Jose Sharks, which is like the free spot on a bingo card. Look, it's just, I don't want to sit here and dissect it too much. It was a lot of shots for Calgary and not a lot of shots for the Canucks. You're typically not going to win when you're outshot 38-22. And that's what happened with the Canucks last night. 10 high danger chances against 5 high danger chances for. You're typically just not going to win on nights like that. I have no problem with how Casey DeSmith played. I don't think he was bad by any stretch of the imagination. There was one player last night that had a positive Corsi percentage, and it was Ian Cole. If that doesn't sum everything up, I don't know what will.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised that Quads is pulling up heat maps, referencing Corsi.
Yeah.
My effect is rubbing off on you. You got the next thing you know, you're going to be showing up to the studio with a calculator. But no, I think you nailed it there. The other thing to keep in mind is good teams have performances like this. I mean, if you look at some of the other top teams in the West, Colorado, for example, is 10-5, and you look at their last 3 weeks, for example, they've had an 8-2 loss to St. Louis, a 7-0 loss to Vegas, and 2 4-0 losses to the Buffalo Sabres and Pittsburgh Penguins. Off nights happen. You even look at Vegas, who is right up there with Vancouver in terms of competing for the top of the Western Conference right now. Vegas has lost 3 of their last 5, and they haven't even had a difficult schedule in terms of both quality of competition, the teams that they've gone up against, nor have they had a condensed schedule the way the Canucks have in terms of a high volume of games in a short period of time. So nothing to worry about yet. I mean, there are a couple of areas to monitor when it comes to, let's say, the blue line. 2 games without Soucy. It's going to be interesting to see how the blue line responds, because I think I'm done personally with the Noah Juulsen experiment.
Yes. Mark Friedman had a very bad night too. He played very few minutes. He was outshot 5-15 when he was on the ice at 5-on-5. And yes, I looked at natural stat trick before this show, if people are wondering. Not a great night for Mark Friedman. So yes, Noah Juulsen wasn't good. There's already people in the chat. It's not anyone else yet, but I saw Marcus Toe in there saying, I don't think you can play Noah Juulsen again. And I don't think that's a outlandish take. And I think it might be one that the coaching staff agrees with, because earlier today we saw Akito Hirose get recalled to the big club, which also kind of backs what we've heard from folks like Patrick Johnson, who has reported that Andrei Kuzmenko is fine and he simply didn't travel to Calgary because the team traveled right after that game to New York. So usually when you have a facial injury, you get tested, you do all that stuff. You don't jump on a plane right after. So Kuzmenko couldn't play in Calgary. That's why Linus Karlsson had to make his NHL debut on his 24th birthday. What'd you think of Karlsson? I thought it was good. 4 shots on goal. Hits a post at the end, gets a little love tap from Jacob Markstrom. What do you think of Karlsson?
I thought he was solid. I liked the play that he made in the first period, the little chip pass off the wall to set up a Lafferty net drive in the first period. I thought his line as a whole was pretty effective on a night where the Canucks just didn't have a lot of juice. He was responsible along the walls, won his fair share of battles. He looked totally fine. Didn't look out of place at all.
So, okay, other than Karlsson, was there anybody else? Like my big guy from the game is Nils Höglander. Like that was the guy, for me at least, that I watched and said, okay, it's this ongoing conversation about what does your forward group look like when Kuzmenko's back, when Pius Suter's back? What does it look like then? And I said a couple days ago that Dakota Joshua doesn't look like a guy that wants to come out of the lineup. I thought Nils Höglander has looked like that guy since he's gotten back into the lineup, which, hey, hasn't been a big sample size at all, but I really liked him last night. I thought he was good. He scored his 4th goal of the game. Look, the guy's on pace to score 21 goals. You and I have been having this conversation lately about if this can be a 20-goal scorer, how valuable that could be for the Canucks next year when they need to pay Elias Pettersson and Filip Hronek. Having a guy who can give you 20 goals, you called him a Garland light potentially, at $1.1 million on the cap. That's massive for this team if that hits. It hasn't happened yet. I was getting texts from unnamed media member giving me crap about how positive I was about Nils Höglander. He was giving it to me a little. He said, look up how many 4th liners have 20 goals. And we went back and forth a bit. People can probably guess which media member it was, but we had a bit of a back and forth this morning, which was a lot of fun. But anyways, my guy was Nils Höglander last night. I thought he was good. I think he's a player that you want to keep in your lineup and keep him kind of, I don't want to use the word developing because he's getting a bit older now, but keep him kind of moving in the right direction as you approach next season.
I also like that 3 of his 4 goals this season have been net front, or not necessarily right in front of the net, but they've been inner slot deflections where he's done the work to put himself in those dirty areas. And to be in those spots when you score, you have to do that on a consistent shift by shift basis anytime your line's in the offensive zone. And that is taxing.
Yep.
That requires a ton of work, a ton of energy. There's nothing more disheartening than battling so hard to screen a goalie. You got the defenseman cross-checking you, especially as a sort of smaller guy, only for a lot of times you're not going to get that puck. You're not going to get that deflection. The shot might not get through. But when you show up time and time and time again, eventually those bounces go in your favor, and that's what's happening for Höglander so far, which is different from the way that he drove offense and scored points as a rookie, and I think speaks to the maturation and evolution of his game as he embraces this bottom six role.
Okay, Wyatt Arndt is going to join us in a matter of moments. Is there anything else you wanted to get to? I think I'm going to squeeze in a little prospect report here. Do you have anything else?
Go for it.
Okay, great. All right, getting to it a little early today, folks. It's time for the Prospect Roundup, a presentation of our friends at Four Winds Brewing. Family owned and operated in Delta, home to the Four Winds Light Lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer. A beer for everyone, a perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Ask for Four Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your door through the online shop at fourwindsbrewing.ca. Okay, quickly, our prospect roundup. This courtesy of our pal Patrick Johnson, second PJ mentioned on the show early here. And no, he was not the media member that I was going back and forth with. He said, of these guys who are all recovering from head injuries, which I'm sure you've known if you've been reading at Canucks Army, the Farmies report by Cody Sievertson, and Blackfish as well, it's included in there. Vasily Podkolzin is set to return tonight. He had that really scary looking head injury. He's back tonight, which is great. Chase Waters also expected back tonight. Tristan Nielsen, hopefully Saturday. Aiden McDonough on course for next week. Really weird, a run of head injuries, and I think Cody Sievertson actually has it on his Twitter right now. Every play where the guys got injured, all different, but all head injuries for all four of those players. All tracking, all positive news there. Okay, what else do we got here? Akito Hirose gets the call up, and this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, but I think I would expect him to get in the lineup, and I think, you pointed out Noah Juleson. I said this to you before, but I thought the plan was going to be for Hirose to play on Thursday, and obviously the Kuzmenko injury kind of throws a wrench in that. At least that's my read on the situation, is Hirose was going to play on Thursday. I would be downright shocked if they went with four right-handed defensemen on Saturday when the Seattle Kraken visit Rogers Arena. I think Akito Hirose is going to get into the lineup at that point. Anything so far as I catch my breath?
He deserves a shot. I mean, four righties, I haven't liked the look of it. To me, yes, Friedman struggled last night, but so did most of the team. And for the most part, he's been calm, steady, effective. Whereas Juleson, there's been questionable moments in each of the three games he suited up for so far. I just don't see the hockey sense there. I don't think he can keep up. It was painful watching the Islanders game, for example, and the extra burden it felt like he was on Quinn Hughes, especially on breakouts. Man, Hughes was A++ in the offensive zone in that Isles game, but he was struggling on breakouts. And the reason is because it felt like he was having to do everything on his own. And I know we've spoken about Hughes as a one-man breakout machine, and yes, he has that capability, but when he's logging huge minutes, he can't always on every shift be the one-man breakout machine.
And also when the opposing forecheckers kind of know that the guy you're with isn't much of a threat to get the puck, it changes the way they see the game, and it changes the way they attack as well, right? So yeah, you're right. The minutes is absolutely a part of it, but also you're seeing the effect of you need to play him with someone who's at least a little more capable with the puck on his stick. And I mean, I was pointing it out to you too. Like, we had this conversation in the press box. It almost looked like Hughes was projecting what he was going to do so that Juleson, or whoever he was on the ice with, it was Juleson, could kind of see where he was going to go. Like, usually Quinn is so good at kind of last minute movements and motions. It just, maybe I'm wrong. It was just what I noticed was that it seemed like he was kind of showing a little bit more what he was about to do. And yeah, it was just, it was interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off here, but let me wrap up this, this prospect roundup. Dave Hall, our prospect guy over at Canucks Army, wrote an excellent second edition of his new series, Canucks Prospect Film Room, where he goes over the positives and the negatives of every Canucks prospect that people want to read about, does these big deep dives. These are real features. These are awesome articles that he's putting up on Canucks Army. Inside Hunter Brustevich's seamless transition game is the one he posted today. Obviously, Hunter Brustevich is on that absolute wagon of a Kitchener Rangers team in the OHL, just making a mockery of the OHL right now, those Kitchener Rangers. Plus 40 goal differential on the season, and we're not that far into the season, so they have been unstoppable in the OHL, and Hunter Brustevich is a big part of that.
Sounds like the Canucks of the OHL over Kitchener.
Oh man, we forgot to get to Wyatt. Wyatt's been sitting there in the Stanchies nightclub lounge alone. No ad read before Wyatt. Grady, just bring him in. Wyatt Arndt, presented by Greta today. Wyatt, let's hear from him. What do you call it? The Stanchies Nightclub Lounge?
I'm not alone. I got John Hamm over here. Like I'm not. I always hang out with John. Like we're good guys here. He's struggling. His Blues aren't doing that well, but that's why I'm here for him.
All right. Why? What do you
I want to point out that like when Quads coughed earlier, he almost dabbed while doing it. I really appreciated that. Little.
I got no cough button. It's like just out of my reach.
He still hasn't figured out where the cough button is 2 weeks into the new show.
That's good. Dab away.
What?
Why do you cough so much?
I'm doing all the talking, all the ad reads. It gets me. I don't know.
This guy's hacking darts.
Yeah. Smokers cough. You guys know.
He's looking for a Hull sponsorship. We know. We get it. Like good for you.
I mean, Gen Z. It's Jules.
Yeah. Are you vaping, Quads?
No.
No.
Good man.
No.
You don't need those chemicals.
Okay. Wyatt, what did you make of last night's game? We were just talking about how it just seems like a tired team. We didn't really want to talk about it much.
I mean, it's a tired team, and like I like Talk's response that they have to learn to win tired, which is fair point. But there are some games you're just not going to have it. Not to excuse the performance, but it's a tough schedule for them, and it's going to be a tough schedule, like terms of rest going forward as well for the next 8 days. It's just a lot of hockey in a lot of cities, and that's I think especially I sit on Twitter after that Bo Horvat emotional game. I feel like that's a real tough one to wake up and go play in Calgary and have your A game because you can't write a better script than what happened against the Islander game, and all of a sudden now you're asked to go play against the Flames. It's like, again, professionals are supposed to find ways to win. I get all that, but that was just a tough mountain to climb. And if this is the start of a 10-game losing streak, maybe we look back at this like going, oh man, what happened? But if you look at it and the Canucks continue doing what they're doing, then it could just be one of those games that got away from them. And in a bubble, maybe we give the Canucks credit for the season. Go, hey, they're going to bounce back. They have all season long, so we'll see what happens next game.
Wyatt, it's been 2 games for the Canucks without Carson Soucy. What's your confidence level in this Canucks blue line moving forward?
As long as Quinn Hughes is healthy, like I have decent confidence in this team defensively because he really is like the engine for this. And I do kind of want to go back to what you guys were talking about with Juleson. It's like and Quinn Hughes having confidence in his partners and playing with people. And we hear a lot of talk about Roenick. Roenick's kind of the big thing of like, oh man, like this guy's just like living off Quinn Hughes. He's feasting off of him. He's going to sign that new contract, which fair enough. On one side, that's very true. But there is what I call the Christian Ehrhoff principle, where if you find a guy that can, ride or die with your skilled guy and give you like a top-notch passenger, that's super valuable. And so for the Canucks, having Roenick who can like read off of Hughes, and we've seen that switch play along the blue line from those guys so much, like that is such a valuable commodity. And I think that kind of gets hammered home when you watch like Juleson and the other guys kind of struggle back there to kind of work with Quinn Hughes and allow him to do the breakouts because as you said, people are going to key on Hughes. They already were keying on Hughes, but like they're going to key on him even more. And especially if the games get tighter and if they do make the playoffs, like Quinn Hughes is going to be a target. You kind of need someone that can help him get out of those situations. And that's why you always hear the talk like, oh, maybe Chris Tanev will come back because Chris Tanev's the kind of guy that will eat 3 hits just so he get the pass over to Quinn Hughes. Like that kind of guy could be valuable for the team to have in their depth because right now, yeah, the depth of the defense, you kind of look at the Canucks and this whole season's kind of been one of those like what happens when one of the top players stops playing so well or what happens to get an injury kind of situations for the team because depth wise, I don't think anyone's super confident with this roster.
We were talking earlier about Nils Höglander. He scored again in Calgary, up to 4 goals now. What's been different about him this season and the success he's been able to find compared to the version of Höglander you noticed over the last couple of seasons before where he was struggling?
I think it is kind of like Talkic principle of winning board battles. I think I've noticed him winning board battles and using his body. Like he's not the biggest guy, but he's positioning his body well to separate the other defenders from the puck. And it's kind of like Sedin thing. Maybe they're helping. I don't know. But like you're seeing that from a couple of guys on the team who just got very, very engaged. Brock Besser's another one who was always, I thought, a very smart player at getting the puck back. But he himself is also using body positioning and kind of controlling the battles a lot better than they have in the past. So for me, I just see like Höglander taking the puck to the net, kind of that Lafferty style going to the net and kind of giving Talkic that north-south game that he wants. But yeah, the board battles stand out to me as something I think Höglander's really picked up his game with.
Wyatt, predictions for Saturday night. This is the 3rd of those 7 games that the Canucks are going to play within the span of 11 days.
I think they're going to come back. They're going to bounce back. The schedule overall, time-wise is tough, but their opponents, it is kind of a softer schedule. I know they got a couple of guys like the Knights and the Avalanche will be tough, but if this team continues, even if the PDO drops a bit, as we all wait for, I do think they have a chance to have a solid run of things. And, maybe I'm giving too much credit to Rick Tocchet, but it feels like he's going to have this team prepared. Like I think that game yesterday, he's going to use that as another lesson for this team of like, hey, this is what happens when you don't, find ways to play the system properly.
One thing I wanted to ask you more big picture wise, there's been a lot of speculation lately about Elias Pettersson, his contract situation. And there's this idea that we don't know if and when he does sign, if it's going to be more of a mid-range deal, 3 or 4 years, or what I think a lot of Canucks fans are hoping for is longer-term 8-year deal. How would you feel if Pettersson's extension, whenever he does sign it, if it ends up closer to the 3 to 4 year range rather than the 8?
I mean, that's kind of the vibe you get with Pettersson. Like he's betting on himself. Like a lot of people might just want to lock that up. He's like been playing, fantastic, leading the league points, all that stuff. Maybe you kind of cash in now and secure that bag for long term. But I think Pettersson, not that everyone on the team doesn't want to win, but this guy, I think like he needs that Stanley Cup. Like that is like, this is his goal. Everyone has that, I get it, but like he is hyper focused. Like he's going to be a winner. He's had a lot of losing in the city. And I think for him, giving that 3-4 years, like Canucks playing well now, but he's probably reading the PDO articles too. He's like, you know what? Maybe it's going to drop a bit. I can't trust this so much. So for him, it gives him a bit more leeway, and maybe he does like do fantastic and keeps like getting better and better and leads the league in scoring. And maybe he's like, you know what? I'm going to get even more money when the cap goes up. Like he could be just betting on himself. We'll see what happens. But for me, I think it's very much on brand for what Pettersson's doing, what we've heard. Like I think he's making sure he's not locked into one of those contracts that, maybe he's stuck in Vancouver for a long time with the team, like if it, starts spiraling.
Grady.
Wyatt, I see the Buffalo Bills hat.
Yeah.
Later today, David Quadrelli for his Betway best bet has the New York Jets money line upsetting those Bills on Sunday. First off, can I get your comment on that? And secondly, are the Bills frauds? And what the hell is going on with Josh Allen?
Well, they did. I mean, they got rid of Dorsey. Dorsey was a huge problem there. So that's a tough bet to make. So they just fired a dude. That's how you get the emotional pushback. So that is a ballsy bet from Quads. I don't know if I'd be dabbing after that one.
I'll quickly defend that one. So I was basing that bet entirely off of I love me some Jets football. Zach Wilson, big Zach Wilson guy. But I also just see Wyatt Rage tweeting about the Bills all the time. So I'm like, they can't be that good. Like, I don't watch much football, but I'm like, they can't be that good if Wyatt's complaining about them all the time. So yeah, go Jets, baby. Yeah. This is not betting advice, just to be clear.
Their defense is like, there's a lot of injuries to the defense. Josh Allen is one of those guys that when they're dialed in, they're fantastic, but they can be a bit emotional when he gets away. That's when the game gets away from him. He starts and to be fair, like the coaching has not been great for him either. So I think, I don't think Dorsey was the full problem, but I do think the team's going to see that as like, oh God, like we got a guy fired. They all liked Ken Dorsey. Like he was a good guy to them. I think they're going to realize like, oh, we were part of this, and they're going to have a bbit of a bounce back. So we'll see what happens.
Cornerback, middle linebacker, free safety, left tackle.
Milano's the heart of that defense. Yeah, they've got the injury. But the thing is, the defense hasn't even really been the issue. It's been the offense. That's why I think Dorsey took the brunt of it. And McDermott, the head coach, is a good defensive guy, but I don't think he understands offense. So I don't want to say I'm hopeful for the Bills, but I think they're going to win the game.
I should have been more clear. You said defense, so I was trying to name as many positions I could.
That's what I thought.
Did you Google that? You were dabbing and Googling?
No,
all right.
I didn't Google it. That was off the top of my head. I used to play Madden. You remember last year when you would submit the stanchions, I'm like, hey, I'm kicking ass on Madden right now. I'm playing Ultimate Team. And I was good. I was good at Madden, and I don't know anything about the NFL.
On rookie mode, probably.
No, I'm on Ultimate Team online. I was doing well. I did really well.
You trying to guess the positions like that's a fun safety, and then there's a super safety, and they're really.
Well, I can see because it shows you where they are, and I didn't know, like, I don't know the plays or whatever, but I learned which plays I like. And
what is TE? I thought it was TD.
All right,
that's me. That's basically me. I know even less than the Quads about football.
Arm's just trying to stay out of the way of this conversation. Sliding out of frame.
Next time you come on, we'll have some football trivia between Harmon and I.
I would love that. Football. I book it, Grady. Book it.
I mean, we would do it today, but we didn't give you any time to prep. And
I'll prepare a basic football quiz for you guys. That'll be fun.
Okay, next Friday. People can look forward to that. But Wyatt, thank you so much for joining us today, man. Much appreciated.
Thanks, boys. Have a good rest of the show.
That is Wyatt Arndt. Always such a good time. Such a good time chatting with Wyatt. Okay, I don't even know where we go from there.
Show's off the rails.
Speeding's contract before that. Sorry, folks. I'm all over the place today. This is the first show that I was late to. This used to be a running bit when I worked with Faber, was I used to show up at like 5-10 minutes before the show, and it's just because I was way busier back then, and we had to figure out some things with my workflow to allow me to get to the studio on time. And today it was similar. I was working in the office though, here at the Wall Center. I was working and I couldn't get off the phone. Anyways, not gonna get into it, but I'm a little bit off the rails today, as people can guess. But Wendy's is letting you win real food with the Daily Face-Off Survivor game. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning no matter what. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouth-watering jaws of defeat along with some fresh, never-frozen beef. Put your prediction skills to the test and score yourself 1,300 bonus points if you win the week. Use your points to grab your favorite menu items at Wendy's. Sign up to play Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor Fantasy to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. No comment on this week's game. I'll be back next week. I was eliminated on the first day. I don't want to talk about it. So check it out though, folks. dailyfaceoff.com. You'll find it there. The Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor game. A lot of fun for most people.
Love me a Baconator. Oh,
yeah, that spicy chicken sandwich is good too. And they had the barbecue bacon cheeseburger. A lot of good stuff over at Wendy's, and I'll be back next week. Mark my words. See, I had to clear my throat again there. Anyways, okay. Elias Pettersson's next contract.
Too much vaping.
Yeah, way too much Noah Juleson.
Oh.
Ooh. Yeah, I need to get
I need to take a shower after that joke. Okay, Elias Pettersson's next contract. It's a hot button topic in Vancouver right now. Our pal Frank Saravalli, Daddy Faceoff as we like to call him, over at Daily Faceoff, he reported at the GM meetings with Patrick Allvin. He spoke with Allvin and said that they're working toward a Pettersson contract. That kind of sparked all of the conversations we're hearing right now in the media about Elias Pettersson and his contract. Things are progressing well by all accounts. I believe it was Friedman who said it's not a matter of if this is going to get done anymore, it's when and how long. So that's where we're going here. Instead of the when question, we're going to ask how long. Like, what does it look like? And folks, we're going to do anyone else later, but get your Pettersson predictions in for his contract. Give me a short-term contract prediction and a long-term contract prediction, because I believe it was Frank again this morning. Grady, correct me if I'm wrong. Just correct me if I'm wrong. But Frank said this morning that the Pettersson camp is still looking at long-term or short-term. Like, they haven't really decided, even though a lot of the reporting we've been seeing has been saying, yeah, it's looking like short-term. It's looking like 3 or 4 years. I think Sat's thrown that out there. Rick's thrown that out there. Friedman, and, not to put words in their mouths, obviously, but like, we have heard that kind of stuff from them about, it being a shorter term deal. So I think a lot of fans, just with how many people are talking about it, are preparing themselves for it to be a short-term deal. And hey, that could still happen, but it's definitely not a foregone conclusion that this is going to be a 3 or 4 year deal.
Yeah, so I looked this up in the summer, and there are 15 current NHL players who are signed to a contract with a $10 million or higher cap hit. All but 2 of them are committed for the maximum term lengthwise when they sign that deal. The only 2 exceptions being Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. So we are when we discuss this Pettersson contract, we know it's typical for these franchise players when they sign big money deals to go max term, but we're entering a new arguably era in terms of the shifting cap dynamics and the expectation of how much the cap is supposed to rise. It's interesting. I did an agents poll in the summer, talking to veteran agents who have high profile clients, to talk to them essentially about, okay, how would you approach these Pettersson negotiations if you represented him? And it was interesting. There were 2 main takeaways from going through that exercise. Number one was that all of them seemed to agree that if you're in Pettersson's situation, you don't sign in the offseason. You wait to see how the team starts. And that was before Friedman had the reporting about Pettersson wanting to wait until the season starts. Yeah. So number one, that already happened.
Is that more about how the team was going to perform once the season started? Is that what that was about?
Yeah. It's also just in general, this idea that the longer a negotiation drags out, in this case, when it's a franchise player, the pressure that's on the organization.
Yes. Okay.
Leverage is just going to tip in the player's favor a little bit. Plus, waiting to see at that point, the Matthews contract had not been signed yet, which turns out to be, I think, a pretty favorable comparable in terms of he got the really high cap hit, and yet he was still able to sign a medium-term deal. And the second sort of takeaway I had when I did that agents poll was a lot of them were pushing this idea that if I was repping Pettersson, I'd be pushing for a 3 to 4 year term if he's comfortable with it. Because the way you've got to think about it is if Pettersson signs 8 years, and keep in mind that his deal would be kicking in obviously next season, he'd be 32 by the time an 8-year deal expires. So at 32 years old, he's probably not going to cash in on another massive extension. Whereas if he signs, let's say, a 4-year deal, he's going to be 28 years old when his next contract
and a UFA.
And a UFA. So he's going to be ready for a massive payday at a point where the cap will be likely significantly higher. It's fantastic, not only financially in terms of the upside if he's willing to bet on himself, but also, which a second point, which I think is equally important from a team perspective, right? We know how much winning matters to Pettersson. It's not just about squeezing every last dollar. By signing for 3 or 4 years, you'd be able to match the term of your contract with either Hughes or Demko.
Interesting. I didn't look at it that way. So, okay. So, Harman, question for you. Would you rather see 8 or 3 to 4 at the end of the day? Like, what does it come down to for you?
If I'm the Canucks, I want 8. I want the maximum term.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people in the chat are asking, how would you get Pettersson to take less? And I don't think this is the player to try to play hardball with here. Like I wouldn't, is the simple answer. This was the question. What will you do as GM to make PD sign a cheap contract? I don't think this is the player to do it with. I just
free meals at Elisa.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd offer him ownership in the team. I don't know, like a free apartment or something in Aquilini South. I don't know.
You're gonna break every CBA rule, Quad.
Hey, they don't need to know about that.
The Messier napkin. Okay. All right. So I don't know. Like it's such a complicated situation. I look at it and you talk about matching the term with Hughes or Demko. Like, what's the advantage to that from a team perspective?
None. It's only in the advantage of the player.
Well, to some extent it is for the team. Like,
why?
I don't know. If the team say they did poorly, all that money coming off the books at the same time.
You'd be trading those pieces.
That's true.
And he'd have, like, at that point, if you were in blow it up mode, player's going to have more value if he's locked up long term.
So are you telling me there's no advantage to a 3 or 4 year deal for the team?
Not really, because, the cap hit might be a bit lower.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Because you're buying UFA years, you're going to have to give him more AAV.
Yes, but even if it's a 3 or 4 year deal, only the first year is an RFA deal. So it's not going to be as steep of a discount as you think.
What does a 3 to 4 year deal look like in terms of cap hit?
So I was kicking around a guesstimation. I haven't had a chance to run this by other people in NHL front offices or other agents. So this is truly a guesstimation, and I want to see what you guys think. The way I was sort of thinking about it was first year is an RFA is an RFA year. His qualifying offer, I believe, is 10.25, or the last year of his current sort of deal is at 10.25 because it's backloaded. So if you have something around that range, year one being 10.25, or if you wanted to bump it up a little bit, 10.5, and then beyond that, I almost looked at it as splitting the difference between Pastrnak and Matthews, because Matthews got 13.25 on a 4-year deal, but Matthews, the Leafs had to pay a little bit extra because there's an extra UFA year involved. Plus, he's won a Hart Trophy.
Sure.
Like, he's got a stronger resume in that sense. So I don't think he's quite at Matthews's leverage
and the goal scoring.
Exactly.
And he plays in Toronto, which will inflate his value to a certain degree.
Yes. But I also think you could make the case that Pettersson has perhaps eclipsed Pastrnak as a comparable, especially because of the positional premium.
Mm-hmm.
So if you split the difference between that would be 12.25. So it's like, break it down year one, if you have it as 10.25, because it's an RFA. The RFA year, and then you went 12.25, you'd end up with an AAV in around the mid 11 range.
That's a lot more palatable. I think good, because when we were talking about an 8-year deal, you and I were throwing out like 12.5 up to 14. Like that's what we were throwing out when we were talking about an 8-year deal. So, okay, I ask you this, Harman. When we talk about advantages for the team, look, the three of us have discussed it just now. The only real advantage is a lower cap hit. Does the team need to take that into consideration when they look at Filip Hronek? Because how much of a disaster would it be if they had to lose Filip Hronek in the offseason? Like, do they need that kind of luxury, that extra $1-2 million in cap space for next year with the OEL buyout and everything?
They don't need it. I would value the long-term security of having Pettersson signed up as long as possible over minimal AAV savings personally.
Yep.
I don't think they're that squeezed. They are squeezed, don't get me wrong.
But you've got Myers, Beauvillier coming off the books.
Yeah.
That's like $10 million right there.
Yeah. Do we have feedback in the chat about that guesstimation process? It was a guesstimation. This wasn't thoroughly
people
analytical.
Liked it. How much does it change if he wins the Hart or a major award, the Art Ross, whatever?
Yeah.
If he wins a major award, how much does it change things if the Canucks don't get this done in season?
That's a tough one.
I know, and
I think he gets closer
yeah.
to Matthews' range, because then he would have the Hart on his resume the way Matthews does.
I just wonder like what the dollar value is. Like if there's conversations going on right now, what does Pettersson's camp come back and say? And I know we don't know the answer. Look, I know we don't know the answer, but I wonder what that process is like. And maybe we'll have Chris Gear on the show one day to chat about this, because he's got a lot of good insight when it comes to contract negotiations.
I'm seeing people bring up McDavid's 12.5, and that was signed in what, 2017?
Yeah, folks,
like,
come on.
You can't look back at that. The cap is going up now. You can look at percentage of cap.
Yes, I was just going to say that. That's a great point, Grady.
You know, that's 6 years ago.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do, is you have to look at the percentage of the cap, right? And what the player is taking up on the salary cap, and that's how you have to go off it. What was he taking up in 2017? What's he taking up now? That's how you have to kind of base the Pettersson contract.
We also don't have great comparables because it's a shifting time. I mean, think about the deal that, for example, Rasmus Dahlin signed at Buffalo. It's still going to be a good long-term deal for Buffalo, but it was higher than recent comparables for top defenseman with a similar statistical profile as Dahlin, and that's him sort of establishing a new bar, just the same way that Matthews established a new bar when he signed his extension. It's not that I'm saying Pettersson is going to necessarily top what Matthews did. I just don't think that there are a ton of comparables. I mean, if he signs it right now, again, I think, maybe somewhere between Pastrnak and Matthews is makes sense in terms of how you value his UFA years. But if there's the other scenario where this continues to drag on, he continues to pile up points, perhaps wins a major award, and we're talking about at the end of the season, how does the landscape shift? You're not going to have a lot of historical comparables to lean on. You're kind of going to be entering a new frontier in how this is negotiated.
Aruba in the YouTube live chat said PD will be worth $15 million on his next contract if it's 3 to 4 years. And hey, you just talked about maximizing earning potential. Yeah, like if the cap keeps going up, right, and if he continues to be the player we're seeing right now, and in 4 years he's about to hit UFA status, like, yeah, he is probably going to be in that range. And that was in response to the people saying 12.5 is way too much on an 8-year deal. That's the advantage.
He's definitely past the Sebastian Aho extension that was signed in the summer for, I think it was 8 years at 9.75.
For sure. Different tier of player.
Percentage of cap was 11.68. So yeah, definitely a tier above that.
Okay. Anything else on PD's contract before we get to anyone else? Harman, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Looking through my notes, I don't think so.
Fantastic. Okay, then it's time for anyone else, presented by DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat, and it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. That's right. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's all capital letters, NATION, and the numbers 25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. There's not anyone else's in the chat. Just a lot of people talking about Elias Pettersson, which I get. Is there anything around the league that you wanted to kind of bring to the light? Because I was just looking at the league standings, and look, I think everybody's kind of waiting for, excuse me, everyone's waiting for the Anaheim Ducks to just fall off. Hasn't quite happened yet. Like, they lost 8-2 to the Colorado Avalanche, but it still hasn't happened for the Anaheim Ducks. Do the Anaheim Ducks fall off, and when does it happen?
Really tough to say, because this is a team that finished 32nd last year. So this is a really, really big jump, arguably bigger than the one the Canucks are having so far. And that makes it difficult, because you don't have a strong set of, like, I can't look at last season as any indication of how to judge the Ducks for the remainder of the season. And in the absence of that sort of sample size, 16 games or whatever they've played isn't enough for me to have a definitive handle on it. For me, the bigger takeaway from a Canucks perspective isn't necessarily about this season and how competitive are they going to be. I think the more important takeaway is just whether it's this year or whether it's next year, the Ducks are ahead of schedule.
Yeah, John Gibson with a .927 save percentage right now. A lot of talk about him potentially leaving the Ducks in the offseason. Didn't end up happening. And look, we know John Gibson's a good goaltender, and looking like he's starting to get some help out there in Anaheim.
Well, their young players are hitting. I mean, Pavel Mintyukov, man, I did a piece nationally about a few weeks ago where I looked at some of the tape on him. He looks like Jacob Slavin at times, the way that he's just this monster in terms of his size and just cleanly able to make defensive checks. To have a 19, 20-year-old defenseman.
19. He's 19.
Unreal.
10 points, too. Like a goal and 9 assists on the season through 16 games.
That's what I'm saying. He can make these effortless defensive stops, and he's got legit offense at the table. He looks like, again, small sample, but he looks like he could be a future franchise defenseman. Especially when you can combine it with Zellweger on the blue line.
They're loaded.
Loaded.
Not to mention Leo Carlsson, who hasn't been super hot to start the season, but he's already got 6 goals on the campaign. He's only getting better. Like,
Mason McTavish has been a monster.
Mason McTavish, yep.
They haven't even had Zegras get going yet offensively, which is going to happen. He's too good not to get it going. So I don't have any predictions necessarily in terms of whether the Ducks are for real this season or not. But like, I'd have to look a lot deeper into their profile to make a judgment on that. But I think one thing is clear, and that's that at least for next season, we know that the Ducks are legit right there competition for playoffs, and the Canucks need to be mindful.
And anyone else from Sam Ross, thank God. Is it time to take Beauvillier out and put Baines in? Arshdeep Baines getting the call over Anthony Beauvillier.
No, because Kuzmenko's hopefully returning pretty soon here. Suter's hopefully returning pretty soon here. So I do agree with the idea of taking Beauvillier out, but that's more so Höglander can stay in. Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
You know, the person I talked to today, he got mad at me about saying Beauvillier should come out. They're trying to trade him. Why would they put him in the press box?
I think Baines needs just a full year down in Abbey, power play, top 6, try him on the penalty kill. I mean, he's been fantastic so far this year. Don't rush him, right? Like, once they trade out a winger, maybe later on in the season, I think it's clear that he is just about NHL ready, but that doesn't mean they should give him the call up now.
Sniper, should the NHL be doing more official games around the world like they're doing in Sweden, or is it a huge distraction to the players? I'm curious to get players' perspective on this. I don't know. Like, I guess regular season games, it's tough, but look, every other league is doing this, right? Like, MLB is doing games there this year. I think they're in Japan or Korea. I'm not sure where MLB is going, but obviously we've seen the London games with the NFL, which I watch a lot of, obviously, as we've established on this show. I named 4 defensive positions. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't think you need more per se, but I don't think you want to stop doing it if that's the insinuation that it's a distraction of players, so stop doing it. Like, no, I don't think you do. I think you keep it going the way it is. I like it. Although, put them on TV. Like, let people watch the games.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how this year, for instance, they sent 4 teams to Sweden instead of the usual 2. I'd be curious to know, attendance-wise, buzz in the city, is that a trend that should continue in terms of 4 teams, or do you scale it back to 2? But overall, I agree. You need to continue growing the game in different markets. I also love that they spent couple preseason games, Kings and Coyotes in Australia. Non-traditional, definitely non-traditional hockey market.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. The league should continue finding whatever ways it can to grow the game.
Well, remember when the Canucks went to Beijing? I believe it was 2017 preseason. They played the LA Kings. That was the year that slashing started getting called really badly. So there was like 9 slashing penalties in that game, and I think they were all against Henrik Sedin. But the fans were on their feet cheering every time there was like the slightest body check. It was awesome. I loved to see it. It was great. Yeah, really cool. Okay, last, anyone else from Jeremy Lee. Who do you compare Petey with in the NHL, past and present? For past, everybody throws out Pavel Datsyuk. I don't think it's the best comparable. Also, don't think it's the worst. Who do you have for present?
I don't have anyone for the present. I think he's a unique player.
Yeah.
Watching others around the league, here's the thing. Other stars, you watch Connor McDavid, for example, he's beating guys with his speed. He has that one defining attribute. You look at McKinnon, same sort of thing. It's a speed power combo. Pettersson doesn't have that same level of flash with his skating or being a power forward necessarily, but his hockey IQ, how smooth he is,
cerebral.
I just don't see anybody in the NHL that plays a similar style. Even the other elite high hockey IQ players like a Nikita Kucherov, they just attack in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a current comparable, especially when you combine Pettersson's 2A ability. I don't think it does him justice. I think he's a very unique type of player.
Okay. And with that, let's get to our Betway bet of the day. And we already previewed it a little bit.
I just wanted to say, by the way,
yeah,
the Datsyuk one, I did a piece talking to other Swedish players around the NHL. Joel Eriksson Ek of the Minnesota Wild, stud shutdown center, unprompted brought up Datsyuk as a comp for Pettersson that he loves.
Interesting. Unprompted. That's one going around, even people in the chat.
Ray Ferraro loves bringing up the Datsyuk one. I think just you see him how good he is defensively, and then he can turn things up. Like some of the best attributes I think about Datsyuk and Pettersson is they know when to slow the game down and then ramp it up. You talk about the shot, just the hands, the overall swiftness with the puck. But generally speaking, I'm not a big, this guy is a comparable to that guy. Like this guy is his own unique player. He does things that not a lot of people can do. I think that's kind of a, older notion of that people used to do, like, draft time, especially you see it like this guy is a comparable to that guy. Like, no, it's so hard to find like the exact same archetypes of players in the NHL, especially in the modern game.
Yeah, it always interested me with Pavel Datsyuk. Like you go back and you look at his hockey DB page, which I am right now, and this is the only criticism I have of the comparison to Pettersson is that I think Pettersson's a way better offensive contributor.
Scoring was lower.
Lower.
And Detroit had so much offense to go around during
that
time.
Okay, that's also true. It was a much better team, those teams in Detroit. But you just look at his DB page, and I was just like, he was a point per game player only a few times. Like
that's fair.
It comes as a bit of a surprise. In his career, he's not a career point per game player. I think Pettersson will be. I think we can all agree on that. Just it surprised me a little bit when I went back and looked at Datsyuk's page.
He also won the Selke a couple times, and Pettersson is still kind of working his way into that conversation. I know he got a nomination last year, but in terms of top 3 now, maybe with Bergeron out, but guys like Barkov, Mark Stone, if Sean Couturier can get back to form, he'll be right in that mix.
Bob Gainey cleaned up on the Selke Award, won it the first 4 years it existed.
Are they going to rename that to the Bergeron Award at some point?
They should call it the Bob Gainey Award. 4 years. Look at this guy. Look at this guy go.
Bergeron's record.
I know. Datsyuk was 3 years in a row as well. I'm on the Selke page right now, folks. If you couldn't tell, I'm just reading it.
You didn't know it off the top of your head?
I did not know Bob Gainey won it for the first 4 years of the trophy's existence. No, I didn't know Bob Gainey went on an absolute heater. How do you not call it the Bob Gainey Award?
You Gen Zers, man.
Look, I'm out here wanting to call it the Bob Gainey Award. The Gen Z take would be to call it the Bergeron Award, which it should be. It should be called the Bergeron. Okay. Betway, did we even pull it up, Grady?
We are right now. Beautiful. Look at that magic.
Okay. So the Betway bet of the day. This is not betting advice. The New York Jets at plus 275 to beat the Buffalo Bills. $10 bet returns you $37.50 over at Betway. Must be 19 plus to play if you choose to play. Please play responsibly. So maybe be able to name more than 4 positions on a football field.
Hey, that's 4 more than I can name.
There was genuinely a time where I only knew a quarterback and a wide receiver. I think I could name. Okay, Grady, you know football, right?
Yeah, relatively.
Do you know the positions?
Wide receiver, slot receiver, tight end, offensive lineman. Well, then there's left tackle, right tackle, center.
I thought right tackle and left tackle were defensive positions.
No, there's linemen on both sides, quads.
All right, we'll study up for the football quiz.
You have
next
multiple
week.
receivers on offense and defense. You have cornerback, defensive back. Middle linebacker, outside linebacker. That's kind of it for off the top of my head. I never played the sport. I feel like if you grow up playing that sport, you're so ingrained in it, you will know off the top of your head.
Yeah, and like my girlfriend's family are a huge football family, and like her dad has been teaching me a lot about football. Like I got good at Madden because I learned what zone defense was and what man-to-man was and like when to use them properly, and he was teaching me all this. So I know defensive systems a little bit in football, but I don't know all the positions.
I remember I had Madden 05 and I remember searching through the teams because, of course, when you're NHL, you always pick the Canucks to start franchise mode. And I'd be looking through and I'd be like, Lions, Detroit Lions, this ain't right. I was like endlessly looking for the BC Lions. 5-6-year-old me not understanding that there's a difference between the CFL and the NFL.
I used to add G-Roy Simon and Casey Printers. If you guys remember who those guys were. Into Madden.
I wear my G-Roy Simon jersey.
I got a G-Roy Simon jersey too.
I think everybody does. Yeah. See, that's the most common jersey.
The classic pose when you get the touchdown in the end zones.
Javon Holland, I know him from Coquitlam, BC. Javon Holland, safety for the Miami Dolphins.
I can name a bunch of quarterbacks, but that's about it.
Name as many quarterbacks as you can. Go.
No.
We'll save it for next Friday, folks. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll close it out there. For my co-host Harmon Dylan, our technical producer Grady Sass, my name is David Quadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.